to the Birth Bootcamp podcast. I'm Holly Hopley, the CEO.
And I'm Megan Busk, the head of marketing.
And today we have a super special guest. We have Cali Sims with us, and she is one of our postpartum doulas. Let's see, I'm like, when was that training that we had you at? That was March of 2022.
So
She was at one of our very first postpartum doula trainings, so it was a lot of fun. And you were very pregnant at the time.
Very pregnant.
With
yes.
your fourth, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm, definitely.
But today she's going to tell us about her first birth. And I'm really excited to hear all the details about this one because she said it's more exciting. But will you start out and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, anything like that you want to, any fun facts or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So we live in deep South Mississippi. So we are just like a stone throw away from Louisiana. So we like to call this area Louisiippy because it's you get so many Louisiana influences. It kind of feels like you have a foot in each state.
Mm-hmm.
And as close as we are, you basically do. So that's fun. There's lots of fun dynamics. It is just a melting pot of different cultures and backgrounds and people, because we also have the Stennis Space Center. So we've got, people here that have moved here from all over the country. And so that's super fun. And so we really like it. We're originally, my husband is originally from Hattiesburg, and I'm originally from Starkville, which is way more North Mississippi. So I'm pretty much on the opposite end of the state now. And he is a youth pastor at the church where we attend, and I help him out a lot with that because that's been something that we're both really passionate about, is youth, and just because it's such an informative time in their life. And so that's a huge blessing for us to be able to be a part of these kiddos' lives at such a turning point for them. So we both really enjoy that. It's a lot of blessings, a lot of challenges, keeps us busy. It definitely keeps us supplied with plenty of babysitters too. So that's a really nice perk. Mm-hmm. So we've been married for almost 10 years. We have 4 kiddos, 2 boys and 2 girls. They are 6, 4, 3, and just turned 1. So lots of busy things going on. Fun ages for sure. And with my first was really when I kind of started to really deep dive into more natural things in general. And so that kind of led me to like natural birth and things like that. So my mom had 2 hospital births, and her last 2 kiddos were home births. And so they were both natural. So I had already kind of gotten a taste of that before I was even grown. And so I feel like that was a big help as far as knowing that was something I wanted to look into as far as my own births and my own experiences. So I feel like that was a big blessing that not a lot of people have my age, because that was definitely not the norm. Definitely not the norm for then. So I count that as a big blessing. And then just to have like my parents on board with that because when you tell the grandparents, when you tell your parents, hey, I think we're gonna go the natural route. I think we're gonna have a natural birth. You can kind of count on some mixed reactions. And just to know that both sides, both Nathan's parents and my parents were, completely on board with that made a big difference to me. Made a big difference to us. So when we got pregnant with my son, we wanted to look into doing more natural, and we decided to take some birth classes. And so we took those the last 10 weeks of my pregnancy. And my husband just like, he jumped in with both feet. He was super supportive, which I have always really, really appreciated. And he was actually the one that was like, okay, well, if we're going to do natural, like if I'm going to be there for you, like we need to do a class. We need to be educated on this. I need to know what I'm doing. I need to know that you know what's going on and what's happening. So I really, 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 really appreciate that about
Yeah,
him.
that's not common that you hear
No,
Oh, no.
something like that. It's usually the opposite of where she's like pushing him to like get to class. So
right,
that's
right.
awesome.
Yes, I'm like that was definitely a big blessing for sure. Because when I mentioned like that my mom had a home birth or stuff like that, he was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm too terribly comfortable with that. And I'm like, okay, that's
Mhm.
fair. Like if you've not been around it, that's fair. But I do still want to do natural. And that was, he was like, okay, I think I can do that, but let's make sure that we get some education on it.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that was a big blessing. That he definitely wanted to be a part of it and be involved, but also wanted to be educated, to feel like he was educated doing that and supporting me in that as well.
Yeah. I think
That's
that's one
great.
of the keys to having, a natural birth and unmedicated birth.
Oh yeah.
When I hear people say things like, well, we're just gonna wing it, or I'm gonna try, or things like that, but they haven't really done anything to prepare, that's what I'm like, okay.
Right.
I mean, and I've seen it happen. I've had a few
Oh
clients
yeah.
who were like, I'm not gonna take a class, I'm not gonna do this, blah, 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 and they still have a great birth, but
Yeah.
it definitely is like that's the way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
I definitely really, really was really, really thankful that we did end up taking those classes. And
Mhm.
like, yeah, I've had plenty of people tell me too, like, yeah, I'm going to just try to do it natural. And like you said, some do, and it works out fine. And, but most of the time it ends up, needing plenty of interventions. And, we always like,
Mhm.
if we if we start talking about cascade of intervention,
Yep. Yep.
it's gonna go off on a rabbit trail.
That's all
Uh,
right.
that's one I'm like super, super passionate about.
Mhm.
And because you see it all the time.
Yeah, we see it play out every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's just, which Nathan has probably he probably feels like he has as good a grasp on like all of the birth things as I do, because so he's in seminary right now. He's getting his Master of Divinity degree, and so he's all the time like telling me about what he's learning, and I'm all the time telling him about what I'm learning, when I was taking
Mhm.
classes and stuff. And so we have definitely like gone to school together in
Uh-huh.
in this. And so I'll hear something and I'm like, oh no, I'm like, Nathan, this is what they're doing, and he's like, oh no, that means that this is coming next, right? And I'm like, yes,
Yep.
oh my goodness, it's just so it's nice to have a
Yeah.
husband who cares about it and like knows what I'm talking about too.
Mhm. Yep.
So he's definitely in the know when it comes to birth facts, and we call him the birth husband. So
Mhm. Mhm.
he
Yeah,
knows
my
about,
husband's the same way. Yep.
yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
It
it's
really
fun.
is.
Okay, so were you planning to have this one at the hospital? That was the plan with that
Yes.
then?
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So that was the plan. We wanted to still have it at the hospital, but we wanted to do natural. So we hired a birth doula, and she was fantastic. I really feel like, especially for our first, she was the difference between being able to actually achieve a natural birth, and instead of having to do medical interventions. And I'll get to that part in the story because she plays a huge role, has played. She's been my doula for all 4 of my births.
Oh, that's
My
awesome.
husband, oh yes, we're absolutely in love with her, just over the moon. My husband jokes that like we will not have a baby without Whitney there. Like we we will not. So she's just been so instrumental in she was the one that introduced us to the lady that was teaching the birth classes. She was the one that helped me when I would say, hey, you know, here, this is kind of how I'm feeling, like, you know, are there any exercise, you know, and she would send me, okay, these are the exercises you need to do for that. You know, this is why you're feeling uncomfortable in this way. So anyone and everyone, I'm always suggesting, if you are pregnant, if whether you're planning on having an in-hospital birth or out-of-hospital birth or natural or medicated, you need a birth doula. Like you really, really need a birth doula. They are fantastic. They are wonderful to have on your support team. So we had our birth doula there. We took our 10 weeks of classes. Actually, the last 10 weeks that I was pregnant was when we were taking the birth classes. And so when we were at our very last class, so we were wrapping it up, you know, we were kind of having a more chill, just kind of get together. Like it was more like everybody brought food and snacks and we just hung out and kind of had our last lesson. And so we did an exercise where we were practicing contractions and relaxation. And I just kept thinking, and I even told one of my friends that was taking it with me, I'm like, I don't know that I need these fake ones. Like I'm having to breathe through these, what I thought was Braxton Hicks, because I had been having some pretty strong Braxton Hicks, you know, leading up to this week. And so I had kind of started to wonder, like this was 2 days before my due date. And so, you know, we knew it could be any time now. And I was like, they were getting pretty strong. And so right before we were going to leave, I used the restroom, and then that was when I saw like the bloody show, and I had already lost my mucus plug the day before, I think. And so I was like, oh, I know what this is. Like, I know, and you know, having so many birth people around me too was so exciting, because you're like, I think this is like what we've been studying for.
Yeah. That's so fun.
And the lady that taught the classes was also a birth doula. And so I was like, do you think this is what and she was like, oh yeah, that's definitely what that is. And I'm like, okay. So we, you know, get in the car, call my birth doula, head home, and we're just kind of staying mobile, because moving is what felt the best. And so just kind of walking, pacing the bedroom, doing a couple of the different exercises that we had learned, and relaxation techniques. My doula got there a couple hours later, and I was feeling a lot of pressure in my back. So it wasn't even necessarily some of the sensations that we had learned about in birth class. So I think I really appreciate that in most birth classes that I've seen, and especially birth boot camps, like we're going to talk about what is the range of normal, you know, what could happen, you know, maybe this is a little less likely, but it's also, you know, an option. It's also, you know, also this could happen, you know, so I really appreciate that about our classes, just knowing that this is normal, but this could also happen, you know? So I wasn't really even feeling any of the contractions in the front, like on my stomach. I was feeling it all in my back. So when she got there, we tried a couple different things. And then I was like, I'm just feeling so much pressure. Like, I think we need to go ahead and go to the hospital. Like, I'm just feeling so much pressure. And so we were thinking, we're like, okay, well, like, are we about to start pushing? Like, are we engaged? Like, what's going on? So we go to the hospital, and like, rookie mistake, I let them check me and see how dilated I was. And I was like at the, I think they keep you at 3, I think it is. And
Mhm.
so that's what I was. And you're like, oh my goodness, it's just so disappointing when you've already like been laboring for hours. And so anytime that comes up about, it's usually not a great idea to find out what you're at, I'm always like, yes, don't let them tell you. Don't let them tell you how dilated you are.
Yep.
Because it's not an indication, but it is very disappointing to hear if it's a low number. So it's a very low number,
Mhm.
but it was not low enough that they were like, yeah, go back home. So so we get in the room, and my birth doula immediately like fills up the bathtub. She's got her like hot rags and heating pads and all of that. And that's what was super helpful to me, because it was so much back labor. And so anything hot or, really warm was all that really could help with that. It's just the amount of pressure in my back, that
Mhm.
and hip squeezes. So
Yep.
my husband and birth doula were doing like 12 hours of hip squeezes. Like, their arms
Ouch.
were jello by the time. And I had bruises on my hips from doing it, that long.
Mhm.
But like, that was all that would give me any kind of relief, because like I said, I wasn't feeling it in the front. I only felt it in my lower back.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, so that was it, and it was so different from what was described as normal, but I still knew that that was an option. So I wasn't, because of those classes that I took, I wasn't completely thrown off being like, well, what is this? This is crazy. This is not normal. Like,
Right.
no, just back labor is not normal, but that is still in that range, in that spectrum of possibilities. So again, like,
Mhm.
I'm super thankful that I took those classes, because it didn't scare me and it didn't throw me off, because I'm like, well, this is just the kind of labor that I'm going to have. And so we labored like that for a while. My husband and birth doula had to switch off a lot, like I said, because
Yep.
hip squeezes were all that were helping. And we all know how difficult it is to do those, even for just an hour. And
Mhm.
so
Yep.
they were troopers for sure. So because it was mostly back labor, the contractions, it was kind of hard for us to tell how long or like when they peaked, or so they were kind of hard to time. Um, and I also was dilating very slowly. So we got to, I think we had been there 6 or 7 hours, and I was still only at like a 5 or 6. And we could tell that like I was in transition, because I never asked for any meds, or never um like uh said a bunch of crazy things or anything like that during transition. But like, I can remember distinctly like looking at my husband, and I was like, I want to go home now. I'm ready to go home.
I love that. Yep.
Done. I'm done. I'm just like, it was just
Mhm.
like this. I mean, that's so irrational, but you're just like,
Right.
yep, it's like, take me home. I'm ready. I'm ready to go home
Mhm. I'm
now.
just
Like,
done. We're just, yep.
just done. you know and they had to be, over there, like, they're like, no, 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 you're like, you're doing great, we will go home soon.
Right.
You kind of have to like comfort that irrational toddler a little bit, when it's, just like, yes, we will go home, absolutely, just in a little while, like, you're doing great. And so
Mhm.
um my birth doula had started to wonder if maybe baby wasn't in a great position, like maybe we were looking at sunny side up instead of baby facing to mom's back.
Mhm.
Because all of the signs were there, like not feeling any of the contractions, back labor, inconsistent contractions, just like every single marker was there for baby not being in a great position.
Yeah.
So she knew that her friend that had taught these classes knew how to do the Three Sisters. Have y'all know what that is?
Yep.
So she had not learned how to do it yet, but she knew that the instructor did. And so she called her, and bless her, like she came to the hospital, and this was when my like disdain for peanut balls started.
Yep.
Oh, it's like that perfect like love-hate relationship. Like they
Right.
are fantastic.
Yeah,
But
because they work
I hate
really
them.
well.
They work really
But
well.
if you don't have any pain
Oh,
medication, it can be intense.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so contractions were already so very intense, and then that just like kicked it up. So that was the first one of the Three Sisters that we did. Was, I was side laying on the bed and the peanut ball between my knees, and like they couldn't do hip squeezes in that position. And so that very much kicked it up a notch. And so we did a contraction in that position. We did a contraction with the rebozo like around my stomach, and her lifting up, and and I was like, I'm gonna throw up. She's like, that's fine, you throw up if you need to. Just like,
no, in her head she's probably like, yes, that's a good sign.
Right?
I know, it's so funny knowing what I know now, and like looking back and remembering like my doula's response and her responses to things, and being like, oh, I know now.
Yep.
Get it now. So we did that one with the rebozo, and I mean that one's not comfy either. And then the last one we did was with the birth stool. And so after we did that one, like I felt him move. I felt him
Wow.
and it was so crazy, because then 5 minutes later, the nurses are in there and they're like, oh my goodness, like your bag of waters is bulging, like he's right there. And so side note, I have had my water broken with all 4 of my babies per our request. So mine just will not break on its own. My daughter was almost born in the sack, which I wanted so badly. I was like, I thought that would be so cool. And we tried, but she was just like, nope, I'm not coming till we get this out of the way.
Wow.
So I thought that would have been so cool. Like that was one of my like birth bucket list, was born in Cali, because I knew I could do it. I knew that I knew mine were so strong that if anyone could do it, I could do it. But so like 5 minutes later, after doing the Three Sisters, like there he was, and my bag of waters was bulging. And so we tried for a little while without breaking them. And my birth doula was like, I never suggest anybody getting their water broken, but she's like, I think this may be one of those like rare times where it's actually needed, because I mean he was right there, and I was so tired by this point.
How long had it been at this point?
It had been about 11 hours. Well,
Yeah.
we think we're not really sure when it started. So we just kind of started counting like from the time that we saw bloody show. But I think I had probably been in early stage labor before that.
Yeah.
So it was 12 plus hours. And so at this point we were getting towards the end, and when they broke my waters, he was born 45 minutes later.
Yeah.
So so we were at about 11 hours at this point of just really hard, intense labor. And it was just, it was just so crazy, because from the time of doing the Three Sisters, feeling him move, then having my water broken, like, it was just such a switch. It was just like, okay, I knew for certain, okay, this is last stage. Like, this is, I could just feel the difference. And I was able to, um, pushing took a little bit of getting used to, and getting, that's why it took about 45 minutes of pushing. And I think that's largely, I mean, first time moms, that's
I was gonna say sometimes it just takes a little bit to figure out.
sometimes it just it takes a while to figure out. And also I hadn't felt any of those contractions in the front. And so, when you're pushing, they're all at the top of your stomach, pushing down. And so all of that felt very new to me, even though I had been in labor, 12 plus hours.
Yeah.
It's interesting. That's a good
But
perspective.
yeah, it like about 45 minutes of pushing, and there he was.
Did you push in any different positions?
So I was in squatting position when I was pushing with him. So I tried hands and knees at first. And that didn't feel good to me. And so they put like the stirrups up, or they had a bar. So they put the bar up for me to hold on to. And so I pushed in squatting position.
Yeah, I love that squat bar.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
Love your story. That's fabulous.
Yeah. What happened postpartum? Like, how did that go?
So he had swallowed a little bit of fluid. So they had to do like a little bit of suctioning. And I've heard, sometimes the doctors or nurses can be a bit rough, but like this staff was so fantastic. And the doctor that delivered him was not the doctor that I had been seeing the whole time, which was actually ended up being fine with me, because the doctor that delivered David ended up delivering 2 of my other babies as well.
Oh, cool.
And so that was just that was a really fantastic experience to be able to have her. Like, I knew she had delivered my first baby, and then just to have her there for 2 of the other ones was just really comforting to me, because I already knew her. I was already familiar with her. And the nurses on staff where we delivered were just absolutely fantastic. Like, I love labor and delivery nurses so much. And it just blew my mind how much they love a natural birth as well. They were some of my biggest cheerleaders. They were like, oh my goodness, like, you're doing fantastic. Like, can we get you anything? And then afterwards just being like, oh my god, like, we're so in awe of you. Like, you did so great. And they're like, they just, oohed and awed over Nathan as well. They're like, oh my goodness, he did so great. He was so fantastic. And you're like, yes, I know.
That's so good, because usually it's like one side, it's like either that or like the complete opposite.
Right.
I feel like it's like nurses can make or break that experience.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
so I love that you had such good supportive ones. That's awesome.
Yeah, and they were so fantastic with him. They were so attentive to our birth plan, and they were like, hey, I know that you wanted immediate skin to skin, but we need to make sure that he's breathing okay. Like, he did swallow some fluid. And I'm like, that's great. Like, I loved that I knew for a fact that they had read it thoroughly and were concerned with it, and wanted to make sure that I knew that as well, and so, but they were able to get him suctioned, and he was breathing fine. And then we did like just hours and hours of skin on skin. And it took him a little while to nurse, just because he had swallowed so much fluid. But then once he did, like, that was really great. They had a fantastic nurse on staff, a lactation consultant, lactation I blank on her title.
Was she an IBCLC?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she came by and checked on me several times and just was so patient and like answered all of my questions, as a new mom. And so yeah, I really had um I had a fantastic natural but hospital birth
Hmm.
experience. Like even
Yep.
though it wasn't the norm, like it was nowhere near textbook at all. Um
Hmm.
it was still, I can still look back on it and see it as a fantastic birth just because there was never a point where I felt scared. There was never a point where things felt out of control. I felt very cared for, um, even though it was nowhere near normal, what we deem normal birth or
Right.
but yeah, and I think had my birth doula not been there and recognized that he was turned um and not in a great position to which I and she told me later, she's like, I think the birth time probably could have been cut in half, like had he been in a good position. Um so just to know that she was there and she could recognize that, because that was not something, being first time parents, that was not something
Right.
that we could recognize on our own.
Hmm.
I think I probably would have kept on laboring and continued to get more and more tired. And we just so we went from 6 to 10 in about an hour. So that's
Yeah.
how, and most of my other ones have happened that way too. I just dilate very quickly towards the end. Uh,
Hmm.
so I think had she not been there and had she not called in the other doula to do the three sisters, I think I probably would have ended up in a C-section. Um, just because I would have gotten more and more tired and I wasn't progressing, was not progressing at all. Things were irregular. We truly believe that I would have ended up in a C-section had she not been there.
Yeah.
It's amazing what doulas can do.
Yes.
Well, and even something as simple as baby's position, because a lot of
Yeah.
times we don't think about that as much, at least like mainstream,
Right.
Mhm.
and especially when a majority of women are receiving epidurals and pain medication, so then they're not mobile, and
Right.
then you can't really do as much to change baby's position.
Right.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and peanut balls are great, because moms with epidurals can use them. But if we can utilize movement and other things to help encourage baby, then
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I love how our bodies are made to do that and how our bodies respond to all of these things that they were made to do, and
Mhm.
that just, it blows my mind every time,
mhm.
every time.
Yep.
That's amazing. Now we talked about your first birth. Are there any moments from your other three that are like highlight moments for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So with my second, with my daughter, we knew right away once labor started that she was not in a great position either, because like the back labor started and my husband and doula were both like, oh no.
Here it comes again.
We're doing the three sisters right away.
Mhm.
We're not waiting this time. Um, and so we did that. And what it was such a different experience doing the three sisters with that labor because we recognized it so early. We knew the signs that my body was giving, and we were able to do that so much earlier in the labor. And my labor with her was so different. It was 24 hours, but it was so calm. It was so slow. It was just such a slow, even kill pace. It's just so crazy to me that all of them are so different. And
Mhm.
And even that like is not textbook, because you expect the first one to be the longest one.
Mm-hmm.
And my second one was definitely my longest. It was 24 hours. I think my third one was around 9 or 10, I believe. And then my last one was about 6. So just knowing that helped so much in that second labor, that we were able to catch that so much earlier. And then we also knew that going into this one that we would probably have to break my waters, because all of the nurses and the doctor as well were like, we have never seen a bag of waters that strong. Like,
Wow.
refuses to break. And so I was like, oh, okay. It makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So we just knowing that with the second one too, like leaving that cushion as long as possible. And then really my husband knew the signs. He could tell, like, and he could read my responses and the way that my body was responding to things. And he was like, okay, go get the doctor. It's time. Like, we need to have her bag of waters broken now. And they were like,
Wow.
oh, okay. All right.
He was on top of it. He knew what was up.
Just on top of it, he knew what to do. And like we so the doctor that delivered her was my doctor for my other 3, different from my first doctor, but was the same doctor for my other 3 visit wise. And so he was fantastic. Like, he was that doctor that came in, that didn't just come in once or twice, or didn't just come in to check on, to catch the baby or whatever. Like, he was so attentive and just, checking on, and like he had been so trusting of us through the process of like, well, yeah, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to do a natural birth. Like, you're healthy, baby's healthy. Yeah, great. I think that's fantastic. Um, and so they went and got him. He broke my waters, and of course, like that too, like, intensifies
Mm-hmm.
labor.
Yeah.
And so I think I think that was really helpful for me too, as well, just to have that cushion all the way through my labors. I think made a difference for me as well.
Mhm.
But with her, we had to do a lot of walking and a lot of different positions during labor, because I went in and out of transition. My birth doula said she thinks I went in and out of transition about 7 or 8 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was not fun. That was not fun at all. But again, it's just like, it's one of those things that's not typical, but it wasn't something that caught us off guard, because
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was a possibility. And so we rolled with it, and we adjusted based on what was happening. And but then once we got to 3rd stage, like, came in, broke my water, um, and Nathan was like, you better not leave the room. And they were like, oh no, it'll probably take a little while. He gets out the door and starts to walk down the hall, and the nurses are like, oh my goodness, there's baby's head. They were like, run,
Yep.
run, go get the doctor. She's coming. And then like 2 pushes, and there she was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. And
That's
Nathan was
funny.
like, I told you, like,
Yep.
that was going to happen. And like, that's the way it's been for my other 2 births as well. Like, we get to a point and we make it to 3rd stage labor, and Nathan's like, I know what makes it shorter. This is what you need to do. And so, and every time they're like, okay, if you say so. And then their baby is.
Mm-hmm.
You guys got it down to a science.
Right. I love that.
It's like, this is old hat at this point. I know.
Right. Well, I feel like I find, like, usually moms that it's like their 3rd, 4th, 5th baby, they're like, okay.
Mhm.
Because it's like, you know,
Yep,
you know,
the drill. This is
kind
what's
of how it
going
goes. Yep.
on.
That's
So
so
what got
fun.
you into like postpartum doula work? Were your experiences from your birth kind of what led you to that?
So I have always loved deep diving into any information that I find, even slightly interesting. And so when we started taking birth classes, I absolutely just fell in love with all the information and just how women's bodies work to get our babies here just fascinated me. And just so, being a Christian and believing that God created my body to do this just I just blew my mind just to be able to see the female body and the fact that it's made to do this, and just all of the I just ate up all of the information. And then with my own experiences, so I was very alert to like postpartum depression, and I was very proactive in trying to give myself the best opportunity and the best support. And I had so much love and help and support in that postpartum season. So my mom actually served as my postpartum doula for all four of my babies, which is really special, which is
Yeah,
something
that's neat.
I those are some of the sweetest times in my life to me. And like those were what I looked forward to, like while I was pregnant, like knowing that okay, once my baby is here, like my mom is going to be here. My mom is going to come take care of me. I'm going to have my baby and my mom with me for, the first week or the first 2 weeks or whatever. And so I really, really looked forward to that time. And so I just setting myself up really well. I realized how helpful that was, like in hindsight. Um, But then I also realized that I had developed postpartum anxiety and didn't realize it until I think my second baby was already about a year. So I was kind of coming out of the cloud of that by the time I realized even that was even a thing. And
Mhm.
it was just like a short little article in a women's magazine, like just a one-page article. And I'm reading it going, oh my goodness, like somebody else feels like this too. Like I thought it was just me, like, and
Mm-hmm.
isn't that where we all, you
Yep.
know,
Yeah, I
at
don't
some
feel like many people see it in the process, but it's like after you're like, oh, okay.
right, right. When you're reading this and you're like, oh wow, yeah, this totally makes sense to me,
Mhm.
looking back when you kind of come out of that fog. And so just realizing that it had a name, realizing that I was not the only one who had experienced this, really, really lit a fire in me and a passion to make sure other women didn't feel that way, that they didn't feel alone, they didn't feel like they were the only ones and they couldn't talk to anybody. And I knew that the chances of developing that were drastically reduced if you had help and had support. And just the American culture that we live in today, a lot of families aren't near their relatives, or maybe they have a really strained relationship with their relatives, and that's not someone they would want in their home during such a vulnerable time in your life. So that partnered with my love of all things mom, baby, labor and delivery, like pregnancy related, that together with my passion to help reduce the numbers in any way that I could of postpartum anxiety and postpartum doula, like that was what drove me to get certified as a postpartum doula. And I don't think I even knew postpartum doulas were a thing until I had my second baby. Just didn't know that there was a title for it, or or even that was like a job description or something that I could do, that I could pursue.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I actually had a friend who, we talked about birth stuff and things like that. And I saw where she had said that she was going to be certifying as a postpartum doula. And I'm like, hey, I'm kind of interested in this. Like, can you tell me more about it? And she was like, yes, do it with me, and so
Mhm.
and she was the one that I came to the trainings with,
Oh,
and we
cool.
were able to do it together, which was such a cool experience. Being able to do it with somebody that I already knew and loved, and we were also like we were pursuing this together, was such an awesome experience. And getting to know all of the other ladies that I got certified with was awesome. I loved it.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
that training was so much fun.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Man, that was so much fun. They're
Yep.
fantastic ladies.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's
Well,
kind of where it started, was with my first taking those classes and then just wanting to continue my education in that, and then realizing that I could make a difference in that, and I wanted to, if I could, any little way that I could.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Well,
I
tell
love
us
stories like that.
on that note, where can we find you? Do you have a website? Do you have
I
like an
do. I have a
Instagram account?
website. I have all the things. I have Instagram and a website and Facebook and TikTok. Um, I'm trying to cover all of the platforms. So my website is Cali Sims postpartumdoula.com. And then you can find all of my other ones out there as well. So Cali is Cali. I always tell people it's like the first 4 letters of California.
Oh, there you go.
'Cause there's like 100 different ways to spell Cali.
Mhm. Yep.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. This was fun to kind of hear about that. I didn't know like your history with your first birth and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's always fun. I think that in a lot of women, and especially women that become doulas, it's their first birth that affects them so much. So
Absolutely.
I kind of love that we heard about that one in detail. So
Oh, thank you for having me on. I love talking
yeah,
about anytime I get a chance to talk about birth.
right. We don't usually have to ask twice. People are like, yes, I'll get on and talk about birth. So awesome. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for listening, everybody. And stay tuned next